I was about 17. I had just entered college. For the first time in my life, I noticed mysterious pain, joint inflammation that I never had before. Eventually, though, I kept pushing. I kept going back. Finally, I was given a diagnosis. Embracing the dance of healing for me, I've embraced every day of my healing journey, whether it's a hard day, whether it's a day I feel phenomenal. I embraced every emotion, every tear, every meltdown, everything that I felt.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson, and today we're joined by Tiffany Kaloustian, board certified functional and integrative practitioner and naturopathic practitioner with an emphasis on functional medicine. Tiffany is the founder of embracingthedance.com, where she supports her clients in their healing journeys. In today's conversation, Tiffany shares her journey recovering from lupus, and we dive into the importance of mindset in the healing journey. Tiffany, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
It is. I'm excited to interview you because I know, as often is the case, we have overlaps in story. You were a little quicker on the uptake than I was in my healing journey, but I'm excited for you to share your story with listeners so that they can get to know you better.
Definitely. Thank you for asking. Oh my word. It's like sometimes when you are talking about your healing journey, you always wonder how far back to go, right? But when I first noticed symptoms, I was quite young. I was about 17. I had just entered college. And for the first time in my life, I noticed mysterious pain, joint inflammation that I never had before. I'm born and raised in Hawaii, and I went to school in California, college. And when I went to see a physician, I usually was told, oh, you're young, it's just college stress. So don't worry about it. You're fine. Just try not to stress. And I'm thinking, okay, try not to stress. I'm in my first year of college. I'm away from my family, my boyfriend, like all my friends, like what? So I took that advice as yes, it was stress. However, over the course of the 4 years, now I know that they're called flares, but they would happen periodically. I had no idea what a flare was. So I would just go through it and saying, oh, the inflammation, they say, will go away. Don't worry about it. So I ignored it. It wasn't until after college, I was like, something's not right. I'm just not feeling like myself. And I started to then seek more answers with rheumatologists. And as most listeners know, is that the first time you see a rheumatologist, you're rarely diagnosed with something right away. Sometimes you fit the profile for a certain diagnosis, but I don't want to say dismissed, but I was always told, you're okay, you have a few markers. I never really asked what those markers were because, I was like, well, okay, I have a few markers, but sure. Oh, well, I don't have anything, right? So I'm healthy.
I must be fine.
I must be fine, right? Because they're telling me I'm fine. And they're like, you're young and you're healthy and you're fit and nothing is wrong with you. And it kind of almost got to me feeling like, oh, they're kind of telling me it's in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And that I was a little offended sometimes, I'm like,
sure.
Well, I'm not making my symptoms up. I can tell you I don't feel well often. I feel fatigued and drained, and I'm 21 years old.
Right.
So eventually, though, I kept pushing. I kept going back, and I said, okay, run my blood again because I'm actually feeling worse than I was last year. So over the course, oh my word, I can't even count, maybe 4 years. Finally, I was given a diagnosis. It was like the doctor explained it like, oh, you that last drop in that cup made everything blow over. So now you have
So now
an
we
official
waited till you're
autoimmune
sick
disease.
enough to tell you what's wrong.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I really had to press for answers.
Right.
I feel like if I didn't keep making the appointments, now keep in mind at that point, I didn't know what functional medicine was.
Sure.
I just knew the Western medicine route.
And
However, when I was finally,
share with listeners what your diagnosis was.
oh, yes. So I was officially diagnosed with systemic lupus, so lupus SLE, where in a brief description is that is where your immune system is mistakenly attacking your tissues and joint and my
Every
organs.
autoimmune disease fits that
Yeah,
description.
right,
So,
right.
yeah.
And the thing is, it was actually ravaging my. It was affecting my body so much that I was close to organ failure. My the doctor put me on a quick chemo, about 3 or 4 doses of high dose chemo, just like methotrexate to kind of calm my immune system down. And then he didn't tell me what an autoimmune disease was. He didn't tell me what systemic lupus was. And he said, go to the pharmacy tonight and go pick up these medications. I rotated over a couple of years between prednisone, hydrochloroquine, um, and just different medications that and Plaquenil, excuse me.
Yep.
Oh,
All
and
very
that,
common in the autoimmune world. Yeah.
yeah, I had no idea what autoimmune disease was. I asked him, I said, did I catch it from someone? Am I contagious? I mean, nothing really made sense. How could I be so young and be diagnosed with what I heard was a death sentence? The
Right.
way it was presented to me was I would die if I didn't take these medications. And I'm like,
Yep.
it blew my mind. So I obviously had, a moment of panic and grief. I felt like
Sure.
my life, a part of my life was over, that I would never be able to get back. And I think that's the really hard thing when you're in your 20s to hear that the life that you know, that you knew, and that you expected to have no longer exists. So, and the way that he explained it to me was very professional. I guess he was doing his job. He was very, here's your diagnosis, here's your medication, come and see me in 3 weeks.
Sure.
That was it. And then I was left going, I need to do all this research. What is lupus SLE, right? What does it mean? How in the world could I possibly, how could that have overtaken the body? So
Yeah.
that led
Because
me
they
to find,
ignored it for so long when you were looking for answers.
and
It's,
that's the thing,
yeah.
and I know that you can understand because you've lived very similar circumstances, but it's like my goal now and what I do is I want to help my clients identify markers early so that we can kind of reverse the progression of any autoimmune
Yeah.
disease that could happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
And
wish.
I want to change the conversation in traditional Western rheumatology is my ultimate
Yes.
goal, so that nobody else has to receive the death sentence without the full education and the options and the knowledge that it doesn't have to be a death sentence.
Right.
If I can feel better in my mid 50s than I did in my mid 30s, well, I'm not special. I'm not doing anything magical. I just
Right.
took a different approach. And
Right.
so, that's why I so appreciate you sharing your journey, because it's still today, I live in this little bubble, functional medicine bubble, where we're all on the same page. We all know it's reversible. We all know it's improvable.
Yes.
We all know it's preventable. um,
Right.
and then I step outside and I remember that every day people are going to the rheumatologist and they're given their quote unquote sentence.
Right.
And so the more we have these conversations, the more people can move through that process, or hopefully eventually, just avoid that process. And so, and it is a process regardless. I mean, I think when life starts to get smaller, we have to acknowledge, feel, and move through those emotions. Um, or we can eat the perfect diet. We can execute the perfect, whatever that means.
Mhm.
And if we're still stuffing emotions, we're not going to heal anyway. So,
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
yeah, and I
Mhm.
want to kind of pull that thread a little bit with you. I know dance has always been an important part of your life, and there is that emotional component with dance. So
Mhm.
tell me how dance has been useful for you in your healing journey, and advice for listeners who maybe didn't grow up dancers, but I do
Mhm.
believe music, dance, movement can do the
Mhm.
same for even those of us who don't need to do it in front of people.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, truly, that analogy, it's so powerful because I was able to transfer what I've been through as a child growing up as a dancer to my practice name because every dance has a story. Whether it's hula, I danced hula and ballet since I can remember. Remember, I'm from Oahu, I'm from Hawaii. So that's just a huge part of my life. And you tell a story. It's a beautiful story, but not every dance and not every story is happy.
Right.
Not every story is joyful. Not every story has a happy ending. And not every story, has the same trajectory, right? So
Sure.
I had to embrace my diagnosis in order for me to begin to heal. I had to understand what was happening in my body before I, could take the first steps to healing. Because I knew the medication was keeping it at bay, but it wasn't solving the issue. It wasn't solving the underlying issue, what was going on in my body. So embracing the dance of healing for me, I embrace every day of my healing journey, whether it's a hard day, whether it's a day I feel phenomenal. And people with autoimmune conditions understand when I say this. When you have a good day and you feel wonderful, you never want that day to end. Sometimes you don't really want to go to bed because you feel so great that day. And there might be a day or the next day you wake up and you don't feel that great. So I just remember embracing every moment. If it was a hard day, I was like, you know what? Tomorrow's going to be a better day. And if today was a great day, it's okay if tomorrow's not as great. I'm going to push through, work through it. I'm going to learn as I go. I'm going to keep making progress. So what I did is I embraced it. I embraced every emotion, every tear, every meltdown, everything that I felt, and I had to feel it. I had to feel it to nurture my nervous system. I had to feel it to allow those emotions to flow through me. And if I didn't embrace every dance of my journey, I don't think I would be here.
Wow. Yeah. And I can feel that there's so much in what you just shared. First, for any listener that might not already know this, healing is not a straight line. And information isn't all we need to heal. And so I love that you so vulnerably shared, there is this up and down. And what I see all the time with clients as they're starting to heal, and this is typical. I mean, I did it, and we have to learn for ourselves, like where that boundary is. But as you have a good day and you haven't had a good day in so long, the tendency is to overdo it, right? Because you feel well, and I can do these things, and I'm not in pain, and so that learning of like, okay, you have a good day, you overdo it, then the next day is not usually a great day. And I love that you said, but those are healing too. And then you actually do find that ground of, okay, I can enjoy and embrace the good day without pushing my body too far for where it is now, and have another one tomorrow and tomorrow. And something may happen and you may have one that's not great. But the resilience, I remember Oh goodness, a couple years into my healing journey, but before I was really rooted in functional medicine, I remember having a chat with my functional medicine doctor, and I was feeling better than I had felt in a decade. So I was happy, but I was like super rigid diet. Everything was rigid and small, but I felt better than I had in years. And so I was thrilled. Like if you told me in that moment that I had to live like that for the rest of my life, I would have been like, great, no problem. And he just kept saying, but true wellness is resilience. And so I'm glad you feel better than you used to, but you need to create resilience. And so
Mhm.
some of that almost like testing barriers. Because I feel great now. I feel better than I have probably ever felt. There are foods that, aside from, there are what I would call healthy foods, good foods that I do better when I avoid, but I know I'm always healing. My cells are always turning over. And so, you better believe I'm going to try the tomatoes out of the garden again this year and see how it goes. Last year, actually, it went fine. Um, I, but those are who knows why? Not necessarily. It's not something I keep in my diet, but I'm always checking. Like maybe now nightshades aren't a big deal for me, or, whatever that is. Maybe now I can dance harder, right? Or ride my horse longer, or go for a bigger hike, and sometimes your body's going to answer with a nope, that wasn't a great idea.
Yeah,
And so I love that you share that up and down, because I mean, the reality is everybody has good days and bad days, even if they've never had chronic illness or autoimmunity.
correct.
We have the gift through our healing journey of really reconnecting with our body.
Mhm.
I believe most of us, as a survival skill, disconnected from those signals, right? To get through the day and not, you know, necessarily acknowledge the pain on a regular basis, or whatever it is, pushing through the
Right.
fatigue. And so I can like just see how when you're dancing, you have to be in your body for dance.
Mhm.
And so I
Right.
can see that gift that dance can be in the healing journey, because we need to learn to reconnect with what our body's trying to tell us. And so I love that is uh, just a wonderful tool that you use. Do you help clients that way as well, like through dance?
Yeah. Yeah, not physically, but mainly a lot through imagery and,
Nice.
having them visualize what that feels like in their body. Most of my clients are over Zoom, so,
Uh-huh.
but a lot of my clients do physically embrace dance. They're like, I'm
Nice.
going to be in my living room for an hour, wherever they are, where they just feel at one and at peace with themselves. And like you had mentioned, when we have those harder days and we feel like, oh gosh, it's my fault because I pushed myself, it's like, whoa, 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 stop.
Yeah,
It's not your fault. It's
it's
never your fault.
information.
Give yourself that grace, give yourself that grace and just that love and nourishment to your soul, because it's so easy with an autoimmune condition to be hard on yourself with words. It's easy to feel like you're not enough anymore, or you're not worth what you used to be. All these negative thoughts that it's really your mindset. Truly have to work on shifting, and I worked on that for years. And it's a lot of nervous system regulation, because it is traumatizing to be diagnosed with, how do you say, yeah, to me it was a death sentence, but a life sentence of a chronic health condition is not easy to hear, nor something that you ever want to embrace. So I never embraced my diagnosis, but I embraced the journey that I was walking through it with.
I love that. And I know I've heard you say what I say all the time is so many of us, receive a diagnosis and then wear that as our bad, identify with the illness. And so I love that idea of embracing the journey. The diagnosis is just information anyway. Like it's not, the diagnosis really is a label for your group of symptoms. Like that's all it is.
Mhm.
And so I love but at the same time, when you get to a place where you receive a diagnosis or you're looking for one, or you're trying to figure out what's going on,
Mhm.
it's the embracing that journey and the healing journey and figuring out, what are the shifts I need to make. And I love that you said, I mean, mindset and nervous system regulation are huge. I remember when I was first coaching, we would work on mindset at some point, and I finally one day was like, what am I doing? We need to start with mindset so everything else works
Yeah.
exponentially better and faster.
Yeah.
And it may sound woo woo or feel strange for people, but it is. Some people can get away with eating things that may not actually support their bodies, but nobody can get away with not doing the mindset work for sure.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you touched on diet. You had mentioned things that you eat and things that you don't eat. I mean, that was truly something that when I was first diagnosed, I asked my doctor, I said, oh, I heard gluten could be contributing. I heard nightshades could be a problem. And they're only trained, bless their hearts. I mean, I'm only here because Western medicine saved me in my early stages, but they don't know they're not trained on how diet affects the immune system and autoimmune diseases, right? So I was told, eat whatever you want. It's not going to change your symptoms. It's not going to
Take your
change your
medicine.
diagnosis.
Yeah.
Take your meds.
Yep.
I stopped the meds after, I'm speaking personally. I'm definitely not saying that, should be the story for everyone, but personally speaking, I was tanking on meds. Medications were all these side effects were just coming to surface, and I wasn't thriving. I was declining. I was down to 85 pounds. I mean, I was already lightweight to begin with, and then I was barely surviving. So that's where I really turned to prayer, and I was like, okay, where do I go? Like, this isn't for me. And that's where I found functional medicine. Um, Learned about diet, learned about nutrition, learned about systemic root causes of most autoimmune conditions. And it just was so eye opening for me. And I began to get certified and then at the same time applying the things that I was learning in my life.
Sure.
And guess what? I saw dramatic shifts, and I'm like, whoa, these functional medicine doctors and practitioners they've got something because it's working for me.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
the
And it's
testing.
empowering, right? You go from this powerless person who was
Yes.
given, a death sentence to actually these changes are helping.
Empowering.
Then you get it does become a little bit addictive for those of us that are like, okay, let's
Yeah.
learn, because it's like, oh, what else can I do? What else,
Yeah.
but it's a healthy addiction. It's a good thing.
Because you learn so much more about your body, right? You learn what is systemically happening in your body, and when you understand the reasons why your immune system is overactive, is getting confused,
Yep.
you understand what could have caused it, the things that could have contributed to it, right? And things like, for example, gluten. How that for a lot of people with autoimmune diseases, they feel much better without it in their diet. And that's a whole nother story of a whole nother podcast about gluten, because I've done so much research on that. And I'm actually now in that class with Dr. Sam Yannick. He's a well-known DO in North Carolina, and Cogent's immunology, learning so much about our immune system and how these dysfunctions can happen and how we can repair it without relying on the Western medicine drugs for the rest of your life. So I just, like you said, earlier on, it's like, you're ever learning, right? You're ever growing, and your body's ever changing.
Right. I'm not even made up of the same cells I was made up of when I was sick. So why would we ever think we can't change and improve stuff? And you already said it, but I want to underscore, and listeners know I say it all the time. I am not anti-Western medicine, just like you.
Right.
Like for acute anything, that is where I'm going for acute care. It's just the approach is that compartmentalized, narrow specialty approach doesn't work for anything systemic or chronic. It just doesn't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, you know, and nor I'm not anti-medication. I went through phase when I got off of my 10 prescriptions where I was like, nobody should take med. And now I'm like, you know what? There is a time and a place. Like you said, like sometimes we need to actually like pause the process with a medication while we make changes. Right. Like, so,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, for
Right.
listeners, there is no one size fits all. I've had so many people come to me and say, well, I've heard your story and I want to get off my meds. And I'm like, don't you just want to feel well?
Yeah.
Like, let's start there. And as we
Right.
make those
Right.
changes, the chances are really good that your physicians are going to take you off your medications because you don't need
Oh, and not only that, but I changed rheumatologists, by the way. Once I
them.
stopped medication, I found someone else. I found another rheumatologist before I became certified in my practice who actually looked at me and she said, Tiffany, your markers look great. Like, what are you doing? Because you're not on meds.
That's
Tell me
that's
what
what
you're
you
doing.
need. Yep. The
Yeah.
more we can get our rheumatologists to ask, if we still have them, I haven't had one in years,
I know, I don't
but the more I
either.
hear, I had a client who literally had 8 autoimmune diagnoses, and she went to her rheumatologist and he, said, how are you feeling? Expecting, he thought he knew the answer already. And she said, actually, I'm feeling really well. And he goes, what do you mean? And she said, well, I don't have any pain anymore. And, she went through like her symptoms that have improved. And he actually, instead of, what are you doing? Right? Share, I want to learn. He put his hand on her forehead and said, do you have a fever? You're sure you're okay? And I was like, please don't ever go back to him. Please, like,
No.
don't. That's not okay. And he was an older gentleman in a kind of rural
Wow.
area. But the more we can get doctors asking,
Yep. Yep.
what are you doing? Because maybe what you're doing will work for some of my other patients. That's how we
Right.
change it.
That's the thing. When Western medicine and functional medicine come together, what a beautiful dance that is, right? I
Yeah.
mean, what a beautiful relationship. I
Yeah.
think now, I think the Western some Western medicine doctors are more open-minded because they are seeing people like you and I and so many others who are thriving and who are no longer dependent on medication. And here's an example. I was told in my 20s that I had premature ovarian insufficiency. Are you kidding me? Because the lupus was attacking my reproductive organs. So when you're quote unquote not well and you're in the fight or flight trying to survive, you're not going to reproduce,
Resources. Yeah.
right? So when I was told, oh, this is it, you're pretty much not going to be able to have a baby. It's like, wait, I guess you could try to. I was like, okay, I wasn't being like sarcastic or anything, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna get my body healthy again. I'm gonna find the right resources, that right education, implement the right things, and over time, and then I have a 4-year-old walking around,
Right.
so it's like, wait a minute, it's like you said, our bodies then are not our bodies now, excuse me, are not what they were a
Yeah.
year ago,
Yeah.
2 years ago. We're ever changing. And I think it's those different things, like in our practices, a lot of times we identify with lab testing, we remove, we bind, we balance, we restore, and oftentimes people think, oh, that's the sequence. Not necessarily.
Right.
That's not the same trajectory, and not everyone's going to have the same outcome. Oftentimes it's truly listening to your body's feedback,
Yep.
listening and giving yourself that nourishment and encouragement and grace, and also realizing, it does take sacrifice. Like it's it's hard sometimes to be, to stick to, uh, for example, avoid foods that you used to love but don't love you back.
Yeah.
I give credit to Dr. Will Cole for that. He always talks about eat foods that love you back, because it's like when I found that I would instigate flares when I would overdo gluten, for example, or other things. And I kind of knew, but I was just kind of
You
being,
didn't
oh,
want to
well, I'm
know. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I would feel the joint pain and I would have a flare and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
I
the
heard
gluten's
the
not loving me back.
best thing in a Terry Walls group for listeners who aren't familiar with Walls protocol, is another fantastic protocol for
Yeah, she's
autoimmunity,
great.
specifically for MS. But again, works, people will say to me, because I have an RA program and I'm like, I don't care. It's the same approach, is individualized for you. And I don't need your labels. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But somebody and this was just, people in the group, right? So people with autoimmunity, real people with their real day-to-day struggles. And somebody was talking about like, I'm going to a birthday party tomorrow, and how am I not going to eat the cake? And somebody answered, tastes like wheelchair. And I have never forgotten that. I'm like, brilliant, because it's true. And I'm not saying cake isn't delicious, but that cake at that party definitely, and I think, again, it's a journey, right? When we get far enough into our healing journey where the needle has moved and we're able to, I just had this conversation with a physician yesterday explaining, like, I love lab testing. One of my favorite, and I am one of those people who really does believe if you know you have autoimmunity or predisposition for autoimmunity, gluten is not your friend. I don't care. I don't care what you say. There's too much science.
Right.
You do all this work to
Mhm.
heal your gut back up. And then if you put gluten back in your diet full time, you're going to get leaky gut again. So,
Mhm.
but,
Mhm.
but I said, but people aren't going to care that I said that 10 years down the road. I want them to eat the gluten and feel the flare that they're going to remember.
Yeah.
And so, it's really hard in the beginning. I'm not picking on people who are finding it hard. It's harder to live in that place where I was, where Tiffany was, which is my kids aren't going to grow up with a mother. That's hard.
Yeah.
Skipping the cake at a birthday party really isn't that hard.
Exactly.
It's a skill
Exactly.
you can learn and practice and exercise.
Well, and it's a mindset shift because instead of
Yeah,
saying I can't have that
I
cake,
don't want to feel like
all
crap.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, how about focusing on all the things that you can eat and, and,
Yeah,
and how good you feel when you eat other things and how much more present and lovable you are as a mom and as a wife and as a
yeah,
friend because you feel great in your skin instead of just this was me before I
yeah,
began to heal. I was on the couch at 6 o'clock. I couldn't
yeah,
move.
sure.
I 20 something years old. Are you kidding?
I
No
was
energy.
in my 30s. I was literally resting while my kids were at school so I could make it through that after school. Like, I get it. And
Yes,
and so
yes.
for listeners in kind of the more beginning place of their journey, we're not saying it's not a big change and it isn't hard, but Tiffany's, it's gold. Like, it is mindset. That's where mindset matters. The other thing I
Mhm.
encounter a lot with clients, especially women, oh, like people, it's that self-consciousness of, people are going to ask why I'm not eating it, or I don't want
Yeah.
people to have to cook for me, that over polite, why you got sick in the beginning, to begin with.
Yeah, people pleasing.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
And now
Yeah.
it's fun to like watch that progression with my clients, how, 6 months later, I have one client who was like Miss Polite, polite. And she's like, she can go to the local Mexican restaurant and she brings her cassava chips with her.
Yeah,
Somebody who would have never dreamt, like, oh my gosh, carry food in my purse, like, and we just have to figure it out for ourselves. But avoiding participating in life
right.
isn't healing. Like, that's what happens when you're sick because you're too sick to do the things. So,
Mm,
wherever you guys are in your journey, find that way to participate that isn't going to make you, backtrack, slide, have a backslide or a flare or a fill in the blank. Because then you
exactly.
get into that, then there's the mindset of then I've been beating myself up because I had the cake and now I feel, like
Oh my gosh, like you
change
can
the
just go down
cycle.
a rabbit
Yeah.
hole and it can just spiral. I mean, when I knew I reached a huge pinnacle, a huge point of my healing journey when I found out I was pregnant because when you're told something, whether it's a diagnosis or whether, oh, you can't have, you won't be able to have children, um, you hear that in the back of your mind.
Sure.
It's almost like, oh, well, remember, Tiffany, you can't get pregnant again. Remember, Tiffany, you're not ever going to live the life that you dreamt of. But it's like, whoa,
That,
whoa, whoa, where are those thoughts coming from? I mean, so when I got pregnant, I was like, wow, my body finally feels safe enough.
yeah,
I'm safe. My body is whole. It's renewed. It's healthy. It's nourished. And and then what happens? I'm pregnant and I'm like, I'm going to lose the baby
yeah. Don't bring
because
that
I
into reality. Right.
right. So I constantly, and I still work on my mindset. I still work on my nervous system. I still
Anybody who
because
thinks they're done working on that just
no.
gave up because
Well, I mean, and hello, I got pregnant during COVID. So talk about anxiety already. It's like you get COVID, you're gonna die, your baby's gonna die. All these, like, okay, turn off the news, Tiffany.
stop.
Focus on your body. You're healthy, your baby's healthy. And oh, thank God, he's healthy, he's strong, he's vibrant. So we can never doubt ourselves. We can never ever doubt how strong we are.
Yeah.
Never doubt how strong our bodies are, how resilient we are.
Well, and the innate intelligence our body has, I just want to like highlight because I knew what you were saying and I was like, yes, yes, yes. No, we can't get pregnant when we don't have when we're in a stress
Right.
state.
Yeah.
That is not the time to be reproducing when you're running from the tiger, right?
Right.
So, we're not digesting, we're not getting pregnant, we're not doing anything that we don't need to do if we don't outrun the tiger. Like it's just not going to happen. But not but and it's so fascinating to me how, thousands of years ago, physicians, doctors, Chinese like you pick before modern Western medicine, everybody knew the body could heal, right? And even, I don't know if you were told this when you did get pregnant, it's really common for autoimmunity, especially lupus, to go into remission during pregnancy. Well, wait a minute. If the body's smart enough, to differentiate baby from, that's a whole nother thing. The fact that we can carry a baby, we can have a human living in
Right.
us. And so it's like, well, we see all these things all the time. Why is it news to people who went to medical school that the body can heal? I don't
Exactly.
understand. I don't get it. And it's really
100%.
interesting, like in our clinic, how I love and I love all different approaches too. Both of the physicians at our clinic have happened to be DOs, so they were already, they went to medical school, but they were whole body minded anyway, getting into it. They were both practiced as family medicine physicians, so they both from deliveries to end of life, right? Like that whole, and so it makes perfect sense that they would be phenomenal functional medicine practitioners because they have that whole person, whole body, whole life, whole community, whole family
Mhm.
approach. And I was smiling to myself as you were talking. Our value statement for the clinic, I mean, the whole reason we have the clinic is to make that impact, right? If we help people feel their best, they are better, partners, parents, children, friends, employees, employers, community members. They can then give back to community. It's hard to give back when you have nothing to give, right? So it's our little way of creating that ripple of how do we make the world a better place? Well, people are better people when they feel better.
Exactly.
I know. So I love that you
Yeah.
said that, because I was like, yes, that's why we do it.
Yes, exactly.
Ah,
100%.
so amazing. So we're coming close to the end of time, but I want to, because I'm curious. You kind of entered into functional medicine through health coaching, and then you decided to become a naturopath.
Mhm.
How? Why? What?
I honestly started as a health coach, right, through IIN, and I was so intrigued. I mean, that got me. I was like, I want to keep learning. And then IIN ended, and I was like, now what? Right? Because I began to see the shifts in my body already. And then I turned to studying holistic health and functional and integrative nutrition. And then I got certified as a functional integrative health practitioner. And then I'm like, I'm one step closer. And so hitting that naturopath was something that to me was just like, okay, this is it. This is something that I felt was my story led to it. I felt like my journey and everything that I've been through was for a greater purpose. Because like you said, I just want to help people. I want to help people feel better. I want to give people
Right.
hope, and I want to let them know I was in the darkest of trenches
Yep.
and didn't think that I was going to have the life that I ever dreamt of having. And look at, I'm not saying my life is perfect. No way. But I'm saying I'm thriving. I feel the best I ever have. And my lupus markers no longer exist. The only marker that I have that could be autoimmune related or not is a positive ANA.
Okay.
But many people have positive ANAs, but the point that I'm making is every other marker, I could go down the whole list and I won't, have normalized. And like you said, when I was pregnant, I felt I did not eat gluten. I didn't want to even test that. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm pregnant. I don't want to, I don't want to go
Sure.
there. But I didn't have any symptoms. I didn't have any flares. And I hadn't had flares for a while, actually, before I got pregnant. And then I ran my own labs after my son was
As
about a
we do.
year. And
Mhm.
uh, uh, actually, maybe he was about 2, excuse me. And I was like, I literally cried. I called my husband and I cried and I said, my markers are normal. I even had my interpretation clinician through Vibrant look at it, and she's like, yeah, you have no sign of autoimmunity. Like I mean, I was crying tears of joy. And I'm like, it took so much work, Julie. Like it wasn't easy,
Right.
as you know,
Right.
you've got to put in the work.
Well, and I say this all the time. If I went back to living how I was living 30 years ago, I would be diagnosable with RA again eventually. Like, I have no
100%.
doubt, and I wasn't living anything crazy, by the way. Like, that makes it sound like I was
No.
having way more fun than I was. But if so, like, we just can't, you don't throw your journey out the window, right? We just keep adding and building and
Right.
learning and holding things a little gentler maybe sometimes, and
Right. Right.
reassessing, and oh my gosh, well, now I'm resilient. That, oops, I really need to up level my exercise routine or whatever it is. Like, we're always need to have a little introspection, and and it's, I think, like, you're never done. We're just never done. But
Right.
not in a way that it has to be a chore the whole time, for sure.
No, I
Yeah.
honestly find that it's, seeing the results makes every step worth it,
Yeah.
makes every dance worth it.
Yeah.
Seeing how far I've come, seeing where I was, and where I am now and where I'm going to be. Just like you said, we're ever growing, ever learning, ever evolving in our own skin and our own bodies. And that to me excites me. And the progress, just like you said, that I've made, I'm not going to want to go back.
Right.
I don't want to go backwards. I want to keep going forward.
Yeah.
So that was you stated that beautifully. So
oh, thank you. But lots of experience and passion. So we're at the point where listeners are leaning in because they know I am going to ask you for one step that they can take today to start to improve their health.
One step that they can take today, honestly, I'll just reflect on my first step is saying, okay, I have a diagnosis. Now what? What am I going to do with that? What steps am I going to take so that I can own it and do the best that I can to make progress in the direction that I want to go, right? So instead of, taking a diagnosis or taking something that you've heard and accepting it, hear what they have to say, hear what it is that you are diagnosed with, or, it could disease, chronic pain, condition, and turn it around and reframe it to what lesson is this trying to teach me? What can I do with it? How can I make myself better through it? What can I learn? What can I gain? Ask a ton of questions. Advocate for yourself always. I mean, I know that's not just one step, but
that was a lot of steps.
To me, that encompassed my mindset of the first step. Okay. That's what I had to tell myself in my mind in order to take a step forward and not curl into a ball and just cry.
Yeah.
Because of course we do that, but how do you?
And that's okay. But then get up. Yeah.
And then what was it that made me take that step forward? Those were the things that went on in my head that motivated me to get up, to press on, and say, okay, I've got this. You can do this. Let's research and take next steps.
Yeah. So good. So important. So for those that are listening on the go and aren't going to check the show notes, tell us where the best place to find you is.
Okay, so I have a website. It's embracingthedance.com. And you'll see, a bunch of resources on there, a little bio about me and some of the functional labs that I run. And on Instagram, it's at Tiff, which is TIFF _Ara, which is ARA and _KAL. So that's an interesting name because before my certification, my husband and I shared the same Instagram, and I never really wanted to change the name, so I kept it. But yeah, that's where you can find more about me, my journey, a lot of things in my highlights, and DM me, message me, reach out anytime.
Amazing. Tiffany, thank you so much for giving us so much value today. I hope you keep dancing.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much, Julie, for having me.
For everyone listening, remember you can get those show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.